So, well, ladies and gentlemen, I think you're worth an applause yourselves, those of us who are still left. It's a bit like a Wagner experience, you know.
You fall asleep here.
No. No, that was not my point.
The fat lady.
No, when the fat lady sings, yeah. And by that, I don't mean Veronica, no. The Nibelungen starts with Rheingold. You've heard Rheingold already. Now we're into the final phase of Götterdämmerung, answering the very crucial question. Well, the title says the role of Nordic countries in NATO. The proper one is, of course, when do we join NATO? And those who shall speak to us about that is Pauli, Järvenpää already there, Atis, Lejins, and Veronica. They are all presented in the program. I am not the moderator, Morten Thorsson Lindberg, as you realize. The reason is that he became a father 2 days ago, and when I talked to Morten, I said, take care of your baby, we take care of Putin. So, with that said, Pauli, please enlighten us about both the Finnish discussion about membership and your own views on what should be done.
Thank you, Mats. Maybe before I go into those questions and answers, maybe I can have just one half a minute on something that I thought of when I was listening to discussions just previously and actually during today. At least the history books that I have read tell me that it was the Europeans who wanted to have Article 5 and as binding an Article 5 as possible. It was the US, especially US Senate, that watered down Article 5 to what it is today. So when we try to put the blame on this and that on the Americans or take it to the shoulders of the Europeans, I think we should keep in mind that very basic fact, which has a bearing on I hope at the end of my remarks you'll notice that it has a bearing on my remarks here too, but that is a basic fact. But before I go into my answers, I would like to thank you, Mats, very much for creating this opportunity, and it really is an excellent opportunity for us to discuss freely the very hard questions of security. So congratulations go to you, Mats, also for creating this forum and keeping it alive. And I just heard during the coffee break that it is going to be even more alive and more kicking than it is today in the future. So the role of the Nordic countries in NATO. I thought first when I saw this title that it was kind of a game on me, me having come back after 2.5 years in Kabul as Finland's ambassador. So I thought that okay, maybe things have happened, so I haven't noticed that Nordic countries are all in NATO. But then rather cleverly I thought that I would divide my remarks into 2 sets, or actually 3 sets of remarks. I would talk about the experience of those countries the way I see it. Of course, I cannot know exactly, but the way I see the Danish, Norwegian, and Icelandic experiences in NATO, and then I would look at what has been done in between the Nordic countries in the last few years, and then finally I'll try to say something about the Finnish and Swedish memberships and desirability of memberships, or I'll keep you in suspense. I don't say whether it's desirability or non-desirability, but at least the situation the way I see it as a researcher, no longer as a government official. The 3 Nordic countries. I mean, there's a sort of uneducated opinion, at least in Finland, and I assume it is somewhat also known in Sweden, that small countries do not matter in NATO. That the U.S. is so powerful, and U.S. decides, and U.S. sort of predominates NATO. And when you look at the track record, very briefly, I have 15 minutes, so I have 5 minutes roughly for this sort of going over what has happened in for the Nordic countries that are NATO members. When I look at it, it doesn't look all that bad. When you look at the Cold War period, all these countries actually were frontline countries vis-a-vis the Soviet Union, and they did their duty with their friends in the alliance to mitigate, and then if it had come to that, defended the Danish Straits. The threat to Norwegian Finnmark up in the north was imminent. They were very well prepared to do their share. The U.S. was pre-stocking equipment. There were lots of exercises. So both Denmark and Norway, and also Iceland for its part, were carrying on the duties, and they were doing very well. Reassurance, this was deterrence, of course, and they also were engaged in reassurance measures. There were no nukes in peacetime in those countries. No allied exercises in Finnmark. So all this were allowed. They were talked about as footnote countries, but if you swallowed hard and didn't mind your country being called footnote country, then they were once again very useful and being able to do that even in the Cold War time NATO. They then, when the Baltic countries were discussing joining NATO, once again these very same countries had a very strong voice actually within NATO. The way they supported in various ways the newcomers or the Baltic entry to NATO, and then the first halting steps in NATO, and also the way I understand that the current situation with plans how to defend the Baltic countries. They were very much in support of the Baltic countries and useful in that way for the whole alliance. So from that track record in 5 minutes, I mean, I would take very much comfort from and argue the case that they in fact were heard. Their influence was actually, I would argue also that they were sort of punching above their own weight in the higher class. So they were actually more, they had more ways of influencing general NATO policies than some of the big countries. Because and the fact was that they were carrying their burdens and they were useful members of the alliance. So then, when you look at the situation, and I still don't, I keep you still in suspense whether I want Finland and Sweden to be in NATO. But when you look at the 5 countries, 5 Nordic countries, what they are doing together, I mean, there are some amazing things. I engaged myself when I was in Kabul. I mean, there wasn't really, frankly, so much to do in the evenings. So I engaged myself in writing books. So I actually in 2.5 years I ended by writing one book and then editing another. And in that edited book I had a piece on, and I have a piece on Nordic defense cooperation. And I was actually surprised myself how deep it is, despite the fact that 3 countries are in NATO, and two countries of us are not in NATO. So the cooperation produces sort of things like, and I did not know it. Maybe all of us know it already, but even before you read my article, that there are more than one, on average, more than one exercise, cross-border exercise amongst the air forces of Sweden, Norway, and Finland in northern parts of Scandinavia. So it was 2011. It was something like 64, 65 exercises per year. So, and they not only that they were these flyboys were flying around together, but they had American tankers or British electronic warfare planes flying with them. So it to me it looks like pretty much like alliance activity when you think of it. So the three countries from NATO were allowing it, and then the two countries outside Sweden and Finland were able to do it. So and so they have shared responsibilities. They have made plans together for exercises, not only in the air but in the seas and on land. They have carried out these exercises and they are training and educating their militaries together. So this goes to just to tell those people who say that the NATO members are so restricted on what they can do. It goes against that sort of opinion, and it is only an opinion. It is not a fact. So we have been able to, Sweden and Finland and our militaries have been able to do very extensive things with our Nordic neighbors. If we were in NATO, all of us, then some of these things would be even easier. We would get more and more into the exercise pattern. We would get to do this and that. We could, at least we are thinking that we know something about Russia. The last few weeks have shown that we don't know all that much, but at least we have experts who know about Russia, and so we quote unquote understand what Russia is doing. So that kind of an asset within NATO would be very very useful. And I also agree with General Neretnieks, and I have been writing myself, actually not knowing that you were writing volumes on those very questions, but I have been writing columns and articles where I have also argued that now the way we produce instability rather than stability in this area, and we could since it is only a political decision, or it is, I shouldn't say only, but it is a political decision, then we should very carefully and in a very methodical way to study what we could do together. So now comes the third part that I use another 5 minutes to, and I try to answer the question: is it likely going to happen in the immediate future, or in the sort of a medium-term future that we can think of, that Sweden and Finland would join the Western Alliance? I do not know actually, and I would be very eager to learn this afternoon how come this is happening in Sweden, but And I hope I am actually misinterpreting or mishearing something, but I understand that in the last couple of months, the support in Sweden for NATO membership has actually gone down. It has been always that I can recall without now going into these sort of historical reference books that you have had almost 40%, 36, 37% thereabouts, or at least more than 1/3 of the Swedes have historically said that Sweden should be a member of NATO. In Finland, and now apparently it has dropped remarkably. Actually, as far as I understand, it's about 10-12 percentage points that the figure has come down. So it's somewhere around 24-25 right now, or thereabouts. In Finland, interestingly, we very often go hand in hand in things, Sweden and Finland. But in this case, the Finnish figures have actually shot up remarkably. In fact, by those very same margins, we have in the last many years, since actually when the same question started to be asked in opinion polls, and that it takes us back to mid-1990s, when these polls have been asking whether the person wants Finland to be a member of NATO. The Finns have answered about 20% of them, depending on the year, maybe 18%, 22%, but about 1/5 of the Finns have said yes, they want Finland to be a member of NATO. But now, just around in the beginning of the year, in early January, there was another poll, and the support for NATO membership was 18%. And then just, I think it was last week or week before, another poll by the same company had support going up to 34%. And there have been other polls asking related questions. For example, the Finnish Reservist Association had conducted a poll amongst their members, and these guys are reserve association members, are the guys who spend their weekends in military areas, shooting their weapons and putting the rucksack on and wandering around, orienteering in the woods. And so they are the sort of most active part of our huge reserves. I mean, we have still about 500,000 people, 600,000 people trained as reservists. So those are the sort of the best and the brightest in some sense of that association. And they are the guys who believe in Finnish defense. That well, I mean, the silly things they say silly things like we beat the Russians, and we'll beat them again, and our forefathers have always beaten the Russians no matter what, and or they say that our defense equipment is not all that good, but we have the will to fight. We'll be fine alone. We don't need anything like NATO and with all its problems. But even these guys now are coming and saying that 60% of them say that they think that Finland should join NATO. And the former President Atis has come out, or he has actually said it already earlier, but he has come out again saying that Finland should be a member. The present Prime Minister, he's actually leaving his party post and then also his Prime Minister's post in the next month or so, or 6-7 weeks from now. But even he, as sitting Prime Minister, is saying that Finland should be a member of NATO. So all this presents evidence to me that something quite different is happening in Finland that I had never seen in in my lifetime, the swift in opinion polls. But question still is relevant whether that will produce anything at the end, and I am rather skeptical. But I have one suggestion actually, and I, it's copyrighted very recently. I was actually sitting there and listening to these excellent presentations here, and I thought that wouldn't it be possible? And I know that it might, to some of you, this might sound a little naive, but I can tell you I am not naive. I think at least. Now Sweden is preparing a study on NATO. Ambassador Bertelman is doing that and producing it at some point this fall. And we have actually done it, and it so happens it just so happens that I have been heading those two studies that have been actually there have been 3 studies. So I have actually led 2 of those studies at the MOD when I was there. And why don't we put our resources together and the best and the brightest in Sweden and Finland, and have a sort of a Swedish, Finnish, whatever commission, sort of a national security commission together and produce a report amongst ourselves. I mean that carries lots of positive things, at least in my mind, and if that happens, so now you know that you heard it here in this room for the first time.
Thank you, Pauli. I have a follow-up. Please to take the seat if you want to. It's not only President Ahtisaari that has come out. It's also all guard of ambassadors that are saying what they have believed their whole lives. But now